Say my name. I am awake. I am the danger. I am the one who knocks.
Welcome to Breaking into Breaking Bad with Clifford and Caleb Humphrey. Today we are discussing season finale of season 3, episode 13, Full Measure. Quick recap if you haven't seen this episode in a while. This takes place right after Walt has run over the 2 drug dealers that were working for Gus who were going to kill Jesse. And now there's the fallout of how do we repair the relations with Gus? What happens with Jesse? It seems as though the only way that Walt can get back into Gus's good graces is if Jesse is really, really gone. And Gus would prefer that he was dead, but Walt tries to convince him to just let Jesse go because he's so far away and he's running for his life and you'll never find him. And that's happening. Meanwhile, Gus's main guy, Mike, is trying to deal with the situation ruthlessly and wants to find Jesse and really put an end to things. And then Walt finds out that Gus is actually trying to find a way to bring Gale back so that he can replace Walt, so that Gus can kill Walt and carry on without him. But before he can do that, Gale has to acquire sufficient knowledge for how to run the lab. Walt finds out about this, finds a way to get Jesse to kill Gale so that now Gus needs Walt because he's the only one who knows how to run the lab. And as he says, the cook can't stop. The cooking must go on. And that's where this season ends. So title is called Full Measure, which is obviously picking up from last episode, which was called Half Measure. And its immediate reference was Mike commenting to Walt, you need to deal with Jesse in some serious way. You can't just try and patch things over. You need to really deal with things definitively. But with this episode, Full Measure, we kind of see it in a larger sense now where Jesse and Walt are working together. They have a loyalty that transcends everything else, apparently. And Full Measure meant not only murdering those 2 drug dealers, even though they worked for Gus, but now even murdering Gale, doing whatever it takes to preserve themselves. That's what I got. Do you have anything to add to that, Capes?
Yeah, no. This episode was I know I say jam-packed a lot, but you really see the love that Walt has for Jesse, even though he doesn't want to really acknowledge it, but he really does view Jesse. I know we've said this a lot that he views Jesse as family. He was willing to put everything on the line to protect Jesse, even though he knew that the outcome was going to be bad in his favor, even though it was going to hurt his real family. So this episode had a lot of emotion to it for sure.
Yeah. So let's discuss the introduction. It's the scene when Walt and Skylar are looking to buy a home, when they first walk into the house that we know of as their home. And Walt's not really happy with it. Skylar's very practical and she says, "Look, I know the market." This is, and he's like, "Well, I think we're going to need more bedrooms. We're going to want 3 kids, a study." And he says, "We want to set our sights high." He's showing ambition and expectation that things are going to go up for him. So we know they end up buying the house. We know that his expectations are foiled. He doesn't get to achieve the things that he wanted to achieve, and his ambition is frustrated. then it flashes forward to the present moment, and we're sort of looking at the present moment through the lens of his expectation and all of that. I will note though something that you just said. So he says there when he's talking to Skylar and they have a kissy moment in the hallway as they're kind of dreaming about their life together. He says they wanted to have 3 kids. Would you say that that's accurate or not accurate, Cabes?
Yeah, I mean, if you compare that intro of them walking into the house to the very first episode of the show, you see him very excited, relaxed, just full of ambition still. And then when you see him in episode 1, you see him on that step climber thing, just bored at life, ready to throw in the towel. He had a lot of expectations that did not get outlived from when he walked into the house compared to where we see him in episode 1. So there was definitely a lot of expected ambitions that were not lived out from that point to episode 1.
You that's all. Yes, that's true. You might have missed something really subtle that I was laying out there, though. How many kids do Walt and Skylar have?
2.
2, right? But
Yeah.
here he says that he wanted to have 3.
Yeah.
But in a way,
Oh, I see what you did there.
you see
I
what I
see what you
mean?
did
See where I'm
there.
going?
That's church, man. That's really church.
So in a way, Jesse becomes the 3rd child that he wanted. I
Man.
don't know. I'm
That's
just
that's
throwing it out
that's
there.
we gotta check with Vince Gilligan on that one, but you might be right on it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't know. Okay, well, moving out of the introduction into the episode, Walt is trying to figure out how to deal with Gus. And it was interesting. He calls Gus a practical man. And he says, I think we can just, you can kill me now. That's option one, and you can kill Jesse. Or we could go on after this. He calls it a hiccup and, continue cooking meth. And it reminded me completely of his first foray into Breaking Bad with Crazy Eight. When he's sitting there and he's trying to deal with him, he does the same thing with Tuco, right? He's going to say, look, I know he's talking to Jesse and he's thinking to himself, I know we just killed his partner, but maybe we can reason together with this guy and we can let him go and then he's not going to come back and kill us. Of course, we remember he discovers that Crazy Eight stole the shank of plate glass and was probably going to kill him. And so he then has to kill Crazy Eight. But he's still sort of obsessed with this idea that human nature is not what it is and that everybody just wants what's in their best interest. And they don't consider things like vengeance and resentment when they're calculating. And so we know that Gus actually he's kind of a practical man on one hand, and he's still a blood for blood kind of guy too. So he reasons with himself, okay, I will pretend that we will move on and that this never happened until I can replace you with Gale, and then I will kill you and I will get rid of you, right? That's what Gus reasons and calculates. And maybe it's because I don't know what Gus's motive was. I don't know if he's just wanting vengeance. He might just say, I cannot trust this guy. I cannot trust him, and therefore I got to get rid of him. And that's ultimately what broke down between him and Crazy Eight, remember, is when the trust,
Yes.
they're trying to build trust, or Walt's trying to build trust, but Gus is a smart guy, and he doesn't have any time for people that he can't trust.
Right. He doesn't want to deal with the nonsense. Anything that can be bad on him, he doesn't want to deal with.
Right.
I will say when at the beginning of the after the intro, when Walt is sitting in his car waiting for the meeting with Gus, you see him put on that hat.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I feel like that's almost his opportunity to give him the confidence that he needs to be that Heisenberg persona
Hmm.
as opposed to the Walt, you know. And he was he was he was very confident in dealing in basically he told Gus, he's like, listen, you could kill me right now, you know, that won't help you, but you could. And he was willing to put everything on the line at that point. And I feel
Hmm.
like he felt like he had to put on that hat to really get into that idea of I am Heisenberg. I have the all the cards are in my pocket. I could handle this. And you even see Mike's face when he presents Gus with those options. You see Mike give that look of, wow, I'm kind of impressed with what he just said. Because Mike knows what the day-to-day goings of Gus's business is. And even you see it with Gus, like he was impressed as well. But the fact that he would that Walt was able to figure out that Gus did not ultimately buy in to what he said, to me was very, very, very telling.
Yeah. Walt is explaining why he did what he did to protect Jesse. And he says, I saved his life. I owed him that. And I'm trying to figure out the relationship with obligation here. Like, why would Walt have owed Jesse that? Is there something that Jesse did for Walt where he saved Walt's life, maybe? We know that at the end of the episode, when Walt calls Jesse frantically and says, "Hey, they're about to kill me. If you don't kill Gale right now, I'm dead." And he tells him, I think he tells him, you owe me that. But if we think about the timing, it's true that Jesse does save Walt's life at the end of the episode, and so then Walt would owe Jesse. But that's at the end of the episode. Here at the beginning of the episode, we see Walt saving Jesse's life, and now Jesse owes Walt. And you can say Jesse kind of pays that back at the end. So I don't know if this is making sense. I'm just saying at the beginning of the episode, I don't see why Walt owes Jesse.
So
Why did he?
you're thinking of it as a one hand washes the other type of scenario. But in my opinion, when Walt says that he owes him that, I really feel that he was saying that he is my 50-50 partner. Therefore, I owe him this courtesy of saying what he had to say.
No. But why did he kill those drug dealers?
Right, but at that
He says,
point,
"I saved
when
his life. I owed him that." Why did Walt owe it to Jesse to kill those guys?
I mean, I still have the same answer. I feel like it's his partner. He has to protect his partner. Ultimately, this is who he looks out for. Therefore, he knew that Jesse was going to get himself killed or put in a predicament where he would not be able to save himself.
Yeah,
So in that sense, I think he felt that he owed him his allegiance to do what he had to do to protect him, to look out for Jesse.
yeah. I remember this was a question that we discussed early on in season one, which was what's the nature of their relationship? Because we remember how it started, right? Walt shows up to Jesse's house and blackmails him basically and says, "If you don't become my partner, I'm going to turn you over to the police." Right? So he puts a gun to his head basically and forces him. But then what we see is the relationship matures. There's more to it. Well, first it flips, right, where Jesse then has power over Walt and says, I can, I can I can turn you in because I know you're the chemistry high school teacher. Remember, that's what Jane says. If you don't give us the money, then we're gonna. So there's this relationship of manipulation, and constantly, what we see also is a relationship of mutual need, where like in order for each one to get what they want separately, they have to work together. And that's what you're talking about, the partnership. But the
Right.
other thing that we've seen more and more and more is that they're not acting like just business partners. They're doing so much more than that, because a business relationship is going to be contractual. It's going to have terms. And if one side breaks those terms, the other side is not bound by them. And so here, literally, Jesse and Walt are at the negotiating table with Gus, and Jesse shakes the hand, right, with of the drug dealers, and Walt sees it, and that was sort of a, okay, Jesse and Walt, we agree not to go to war with these guys, and we're going to work together to do this thing. And then Jesse breaks that. When Jesse broke that, Walt had no obligation to stay in the partnership, because he's now acting in a way that's going to terminate the relationship that they have with Gus. So they don't have a partnership, strictly speaking. They have more of what I think you said at the beginning, which is this familial relationship, this father-son dynamic. And if a father doesn't owe his son because the son did some favor for him, the father owes the son because he's his son. And likewise, the son owes the father because he's his father, right? Not because of any kind of
Right.
reciprocal benefit. And that's the only, when he says I owed him that, I think he meant it in the same way as like, he's my son. I had to.
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree.
But he's still using the language of partnership, or whatever. And I think that we're seeing that. And remember that line that Salamanca, Senor Salamanca says, right? Familia es todo, right?
Mm.
Family is everything.
For
Because
blood.
it's the right. It's the only person you can trust. And this whole show involves trust relationships. And what do you do when those break down? And a good snapshot of that actually is a scene in here when Mike shows up to Saul's office, and he wants to get Jesse's address. And he says, "Tell me where he is." And Saul says, "Look, I can't tell you. There's this private, client lawyer privilege." But which sounds like just like a rule, like, we got to follow the rules. And Mike's like, "I know you don't follow the rules." And then Saul says something brilliant, which is not a rule, but is a you might say it's a rule of reason. He says he says to Mike, he says, if I break Jesse's word and tell you my word with Jesse and tell you, what's to keep you from thinking I'm not going to break my word with somebody else and tell them about you?
Right.
In other words, everyone's interest is served if I keep my word with everyone. This is the origin of the honesty is the best policy thing. And Mike essentially says, "I'm so desperate right now, I don't care if I lose if I can't trust you anymore after this."
True. Well, he's desperate but also I feel like Mike has been around the block enough to know that if push comes to shove, people will break regardless of what they are. Because he even threatens Saul at that point.
He
And
does.
that's
He
when
does
Saul
threaten him.
gives it
Yeah.
up. He knows that if he pushes a certain amount of pressure, he will get what he needs to get. But you're
Right.
right. That was a really good point on Saul. But it was brilliant because it was all Saul knew that Mike was going to come to him. It was all planned out, and
That's right.
he
That's right.
he bet
Yep.
he bested Mike, and which was
Yeah,
very.
he did.
It just shows how smart Saul actually is because Mike is
Yeah.
very very intelligent, and he was
Yeah.
still able to expect what he was going to do.
Right. Yeah. Right. Because for those who hadn't seen it in a while, he had written an address on a notepad, left it on his office door, and then when Mike comes in and tells him, threatens him. He says, okay, he's like, I can't tell you, but if I go and leave my office to go get something real fast and you happen to look at my office desk and see an address written there, who am I to tell you, I don't know. I don't know what you do with it, which is a way of saying his address is on the notepad on my desk, and we know he tells us later it was a fake address and not in Virginia and all that. So you're right. Saul does best Mike in that scene, but it's just another way in which the role that trust plays in this show is really highlighted in the culmination of this season 3 here in this episode. So the logic of this episode kind of continues to play out as we see Gus visiting Gale and telling him, hey, how soon could you take over? And he says, Walt's got these health problems. And I'm not sure if Gale knows what's going on. I think he does. That it might be true that Walt has cancer, but it's probably the case that Gus just wants to take him out. Because if he really did think that Walt had cancer and things were really bad, knowing Gale, because he's kind of a nice guy, I'm pretty sure he would have found a way to talk to Walt in the parking lot after work when they say, hey, I heard about your health diagnosis. I'm so sorry. What can I do to help? They really want me to be able to carry on afterward. Can you kind of tell me? I think the reason that Gale does not do that and instead is kind of suspicious is because he knows that Gus is going to remove Walt
right
soon.
And they did a really good job, or Gilligan did a really good job of not giving you that information right away, that Walt knew that Gus was wanting to remove him. You didn't know that until later on. I thought that was pretty awesome.
Right. But do you see how the trust thing is kind of just throughout there? I mean, Walt can't trust Gale, can't trust Gus can't trust Walt. The whole thing is just kind of, you see how when that erodes, you can't accomplish anything.
What's the saying? There's no honor among thieves.
That's right. Yeah. And I'm thinking of the famous line from Thomas Hobbes, when he's talking about when you've got no governing authority in society that enables trust for everyone else, because everyone knows if I break trust and harm you, then there's this other powerful force that's going to harm me. It's the threat of that thing, the state, the government, that keeps everyone else in check. And Hobbes says, when you don't have that, life is poor, nasty, brutish, and short. You can't accomplish anything. You can't do industry. You're constantly worried about preserving your own life, and you're looking behind your back. And he says, well, you can't even sleep because someone could kill you in your sleep. And that's a pretty miserable way to live. So Hobbes's solution is that the only way you can accomplish anything is if everyone has somebody much greater than that they're afraid of, that can hurt them. And when that element is present, everybody behaves.
Right. Which you don't really see that much in the meth trade.
Well, you're right. And why not? Because everyone's operating outside of the law. Exactly. Everyone is not afraid of the law. If they were, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing.
Which I believe Walt has, at this point in the story, has come to understand. Right? Like he really understands that no matter, like he respects Gus. He respects Gus a lot, but he knows that push comes to shove, Gus will take him out without a moment's notice. Like he will do it. And so ultimately he knows that he needs to keep his friends close, his boss at a somewhat distance, and that ultimately he needs to have a play to keep himself alive no matter what, which is what we see play out in this episode.
Yeah, yeah. Right. He's in a bit of a fix right now. And there's an image that comes from an ancient Roman poet that Thomas Jefferson picks up when Jefferson is describing the problem of slavery, and this is right after the Missouri Compromise in 1820. And he says regarding slavery, he says, "We have the wolf by the ears. We can neither safely hold on nor safely let go." In other words, with slavery, he's saying we can't keep slaves like this indefinitely, and we can't just emancipate them tomorrow. Uh, in his mind, that was going to lead to mass chaos and revolts like they saw in Haiti and Santo Domingo and all that. But in the same way, here Walt, I think, is in a position where he can't safely just say, you know what, I'm out of the meth business. I'm just going to cash in and or cash out and I'm going to go take my money and just leave. He can't really do that. But neither can he really just carry on like normal and yeah, we're just going to do it. It's a very precarious position that he's in now.
Right.
So all this leads to a dramatic ending where Walt is acting like he's figuring it out that they're going to come after him, and so he's looking to find. He gets Jesse to who is not in Virginia to track down Gail's address, to follow him home, and to find out where he lives. And then Walt's surprised. I was trying to figure this out. So the guy who's the Mexican guy that works for Gus, he's really quiet and he's always around the lab. I don't know his name, but
Oh, yeah, the one that
yeah,
just kind of tells you where to go. Yep.
right, right. So Walt's outside his house. I can't remember now why. And that guy pulls up and says, "Hey, there's a leak in the lab. We need you to come to the lab." I'm thinking, what was that guy's plan? He was going to come and knock on the door and say, "Hi, Mrs. White. Nice to see you. Is Walt here? I need we need to go to like." I have no idea what his plan was there, but whatever. Walt sheepishly gets in the car when he's like, "No, no, no, you don't follow me. You have to ride in the car." Why does Walt say like, "Screw you, I'm going to drive my own car"? I
I
don't.
think at that point
He's
he
kind of being
knows.
led like a sheep to the slaughter.
Yeah, no, I think at that point he knows something's, a fix at that point.
Okay,
And
so he's just like
well,
thinking,
what
like,
does
I've
he
got to
say? He
figure
goes,
out a
"Oh,
plan.
I'll drive myself." And the guy goes, "They tell me to bring you, I bring you." So there was more of a threat at that point for
Right. Oh
him
yeah.
to get in the car, and that's when
Oh
the
yeah.
wheels start turning, and he's just
Yep.
trying, he's in
Yep.
survivor mode at that point.
So when they get to the lab and Walt is pretending to play along with Mike, and then he turns around and says, "Mike, you don't have to do this." And now, like he knows that they know that everybody knows
Right.
that no, we're just here to kill you. And Mike's like, "No, we do have to do this. I am gonna have to just." And at that moment, Walt starts to appear to panic, like pleading for his life. And here's the question: was he actually panicking, or was this all part of his? Was he playing the fool in order to
Good
get his
question.
phone so he can call Jesse because he
Good
knows that's his
question.
only way out because he thought of that maybe on the ride over, but he looks convincingly
He
flipped out.
does.
Like I'll give you Jesse Pinkman. I'll do anything. Please don't do like he looks kind of pathetic, which leads me to think that's not really how Heisenberg operates.
Yeah,
But
but at that point he was just trying to be believable. So was it
yeah,
really him looking out for himself and just trying to like go through his mind of like, what about this and this and this and this, or like you
yeah,
said, did he come up with this plan at this point to just make it as believable as possible because he knows Mike's a smart guy, and
yep,
that's what he says to get Jesse on the
to
phone,
get
and
Jesse.
you'll
Yeah.
see because when he does get Jesse on the phone, and Mike puts his ear right to the phone, you could see that Walt's face went to like, okay, I got to be very careful with what I say here, and I got to say it quickly.
Right, right, right. Yeah. Well, I won't, it's not a major point, but I'll note that there are a couple characters in history who had to play the fool like that. They pretend to be crazy or something. Both David in the scriptures and Odysseus in the Odyssey at different times saved themselves by pretending to be kind of crazy. And so there's a kind of a theme here. And so if that's the case that Walt's putting this on, it's kind of an interesting motif, you might say. But whatever happens, it works. And Jesse, I mean, this pairs the last episode, the ending of the last episode, so well, where Walt saves Jesse. Here, Jesse saves Walt, except there's a crucial difference. Walt has zero remorse or zero compunction or pause or hesitation. He mows those guys down, immediately picks up the gun and executes the other guy. Jesse shows up at Gail's house with the gun shaking and the tears rolling down his eyes. And Gail too, sort of being pathetic and crying and you feel really awkward for the both of them. And then even when it ends, we hear the shot, but we don't get to see. Like we're left with a little bit of doubt. Like, did Jesse actually kill Gail? Did he turn the gun on himself? We don't actually know.
It's a brilliant ending
Now,
of the season. Brilliant ending because it
yeah,
leaves you
right.
wanting so much more.
To see the next episode.
Oh man.
Yeah.
We
Right.
just gotta wait
But
till
wasn't it?
what 2010, 2011, and then we could watch it. You know.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. But that scene was painful to watch, just seeing how much it hurt Jesse
Oh, it was
and
brilliant.
how
It was brilliant acting from Aaron Paul. He to me that one scene to this point in the show was the best acting that he's done to date because
wow.
you could
Wow.
I mean you could tell if you go back and you watch that part you could tell that he did not want to be there. It was he knew
Mm-hmm.
what he was
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
doing, and it was
Yeah.
just so heartbreaking for himself, and it was just so tough. And I
Yeah.
thought that episode that part was brilliant by him.
Yeah. And it's interesting because he's the one who's supposed to be the big bad drug dealer guy, and Walt's the one who's supposed to be the not for whom it's not natural, this whole environment. And yet we see that Walt takes to it a lot better than Jesse does in a way.
Yeah.
So Jesse has retained some sense of innocence that Walt doesn't appear to have anymore. Seems like Walt has completely broken bad and Jesse is still not all the way there.
Right.
All right. Well, I think that's it. You got anything else to add?
Yeah, there was one part that we need to talk about real quick. The
Okay. Okay.
Mike versus the
Yeah, the
cartel.
special ops with the Chinese guy.
Yeah, and obviously that was just kind of a little bit sneak peek for us to kind of see what was going on there. And he talks to Gus like, hey, they obviously they didn't send their A players, but they're looking at us. So that was an interesting little tidbit that with the balloon cutting off the power, him trying
Yeah.
to you know work with the what was the guy's name?
Mr. Chow or something.
Mr. Chow. Yeah, Mr. Chow. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think they gave us that a little bit of, how do you say?
It was kind of a Mission Impossible
Well, no, it
Navy
was more of like a
SEAL.
hey, this is what's to come in the next season.
Oh,
We
how would I
haven't
know? I don't. I don't.
It's more of
But
a
maybe.
hint of like, yeah, like hey, this is something more with the cartel for next season. So,
Okay. Well, we got plenty of reasons to keep going then, don't you think?
oh, we got plenty. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Okay. Well, we'll let's. You know what? Let's go ahead and do it. Let's do season 4. Let's just do it.
Should we do it?
But
Real-
you know what? I think we should. I think we should. We've gone this far. But we are going to take a week off because it is kind of it takes something out of us because we think about this all week. We do all of our research, and then it takes a lot of production time to get it just right, so that we can deliver this very high quality product to our loyal fan base. So we will be with you in 2 weeks when we come back with season 4. Until then, please do like this episode. It would help us out a ton if you wrote a little short review or gave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast app and said just a simple comment. You could say which one of us you like better. We won't take offense. I won't, right? You won't either, right, Cabes?
Of course not.
And if you got any tips for how we can improve it, we would always appreciate that because we're not really experts here. We're just a couple guys that are doing what we can to enjoy a conversation, but we really would appreciate it if you did leave us a comment and wrote a review, left us 5 stars, shared this with a friend, and found us on Twitter or Patreon. Where else are we? On YouTube. We're also on YouTube at Breaking Into BB. So look us up there, reach out and contact us if you like. We always enjoy reading our fan mail, don't we, Cabes?
Oh, I do it every day. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I wouldn't say every day, but a lot of days, so many days.
Yeah, you should. You should. There's a lot of fans out there.
Yeah, too many. All right. Well, thank you, fans, and we will see you next season when we break into the next episode of Breaking Bad.